coming through Iowa and stretching through the Dakotas. We could see severe weather here later on this afternoon. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first let's take a look at our tropical update. And it is very busy across the Atlantic. Several features to discuss at this hour. First, in the Gulf of Mexico, with trying to develop an area of low pressure right here with a cluster of showers and thunderstorms. We'll look at that a little bit more closely in just a moment. Also a weak low right here, a tropical storm here, an area of disturbed weather here, and a tropical wave that we have moving across the Atlantic. Just barely detect the swirl of the clouds associated with that. Now here's the latest on our tropical storm Alex. This as of 11 a.m. Eastern Time, with the latest coordinates from the National Hurricane Center putting the center of the storm at 20.1 north and at 59.0 west. That is about 300 miles to the east northeast of the northern Leeward Islands, which is some good news because it looks like the brunt of the storm is going to be moving away from the islands. It should not really be affected by this. The winds, the maximum sustained winds are at 40 miles an hour and movement to the northwest at 13 miles an hour. The latest aircraft reconnaissance plane that flew into this area does find that the center is well removed from most of the convection. The stronger winds are to the north as well as to the northeast of the area of low pressure. And the reason for that is that we have an area of lower pressure here in the upper levels of the atmosphere. It's a trough, and the rotation of the wind coming around that trough is moving over Tropical Storm Alex, pushing the cloud tops well up to the north away from that low. And so that is in a weakening mode. It's hard to get organized with the wind coming across Alex at about 40 to 50 miles an hour. So that is a sign that things may be changing with Alex and perhaps weakening somewhat. The official forecast track does put Alex to the northwest, continuing on that path over the next 24 to 48 hours. And then one of the computer models begins to develop an area of low pressure off the North Carolina coast, builds a high in here, and that may help steer Alex more up to the north. So all that being said, we will just continue to monitor Alex and keep you informed on some of the latest conditions. It's going to be a fine day, though, in Puerto Rico with plenty of sunshine. Also for the Virgin Islands, we're not looking for any big problems. We do have a weak area of low pressure here, continues to weaken as it moves off to the west-southwest, spreading the clouds and the showers over these islands. And at this point, no signs of any further development. Watching closely this area here for any type of development along our old front in the Gulf of Mexico. Sea surface temperatures are quite warm here, and so development would be possible with high pressure trying to build in at the upper levels of the atmosphere. At this time, the buoy and ship reports, however, do not show any circulation associated with this. It has been fairly persistent over the past 18 hours, so we'll continue to monitor it for any type of development. Disturbed weather dying out here, no signs of development with that. And then our tropical wave still showing not much convection. However, some development is possible with this. So we will monitor it, as well as the National Hurricane Center, keeping a close eye on this, trying to see if some of this convection is going to try and wrap around that area of low pressure. Looking at showers, clouds, thunderstorms coming off the coast of Africa, but at this time, nothing getting its act together anytime soon. This time of year throughout history is when we have seen more activity in the Atlantic for tropical storms and also hurricanes. The peak coming in August and then September, and also a secondary peak here in October. So not out of the question, at least through history, to see plenty of activity in the Atlantic, the Gulf, and also the Caribbean. Well, this is the Pacific, and we have seen the activity here. Hurricane Estelle continuing to move off to the west and northwest at this time, and some weakening possible with this, as we are seeing the eye begin to close down, not seeing too much development with this. Throughout the morning hours, the winds strengthen somewhat. Maximum sustained winds now at 130 miles an hour. The movement to the west-northwest at 14 miles an hour. Closer view shows that you really cannot tell too much of that eye. It is forecast to weaken slowly as it pushes off to the west in the next 48 hours. The upcoming 48 hours shows rain pushing through Iowa as well as Missouri. That's where we've had some lightning earlier this morning, but the threat for more severe weather this afternoon coming in, as well as heavy downpours developing in this area. Stay with us for your local.
storm watch, and of course we focus in on the tropics quite a bit, especially this time of the year. Did want to let you know, though, the National Weather Service in North Platte has issued a severe thunderstorm warning for western Hooker County in west central Nebraska. Also want to let you know that Alex is no more. Let's get an update on the tropical update that we have for you. The Hurricane Hunter aircraft investigating Alex this afternoon found no significant pressure gradient, no winds, basically so much so that they went from what once was Tropical Storm Alex to the remnants of Alex. I mean, they even skipped down gradient to a depression. So unless Alex were to fire again, it's pretty much written off. But if it does regenerate, it will be Alex, and obviously the Hurricane Center will watch that. Now, of course, Alex is, believe it or not, one of the least things we're worried about that's going on in the tropics right now. We've got convection in the north central Gulf. We've got a frontal wave off the southeast coast over very warm water, about 29 Celsius to be exact. We have a huge low-level swirl about 1,100 miles east of the Lesser Antilles with no convection, but it is in what we call a call area or a favorable area. And also another weak area of low pressure kind of on the western side of this upper trough, which if we watch it move toward the west, which it's doing at about 5 to 15 miles an hour, it'll get under an area of more favorable development the next day or so. So a lot of little interesting things, but nothing that's going to happen very quickly, and that's the good news. So again, the remnants of Alex, a weak tropical low pressure north of Hispaniola. Here's our frontal low off the southeast coast, and some convection in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. We'll look at all these areas for you. Now, the computer models generate quite a bit of rainfall offshore over the next several days with this frontal wave. It could, in time, take on some tropical characteristics because the models don't just kick it out. They leave it here. So we could start to see something generate and take on some tropical characteristics in time. But right now that has not happened. We do not feel it is going to happen in the immediate future, but it could happen. And that's something we need to watch. So far, we have seen some lighter showers try and drift in on the beaches, but it's actually been a pretty nice day here. Most of the heavy rain has been offshore, which today's computer models advertise as the main threat with this over the next couple of days. But if this were to jog 50 miles west, these heavy rain bands would follow. And so that's something that we need to watch. Plus, we'll keep an eye on this if it takes on tropical characteristics. All right, we move east of the islands again. Another look at the remnants of Alex up to the north here. But this is, believe it or not, a beautiful low-level swirl that you can see on the visible satellite imagery. There's no convection with it at all to speak of, just a few showers, so it's really not much to talk about. And in the eastern Atlantic, here's a look at another tropical wave coming off the African coast pretty far to the south, but obviously something to watch as we kind of get closer toward the Cape Verde season, which unofficially starts on August 15th. The Caribbean is quiet. Again, here's that other weak area of low pressure, which I would keep an eye on. Pressure's right around 1,016 millibars, and the areas, as far as the wind field is concerned, the upper levels are getting a little bit more favorable for this. So let's keep an eye out north and east of the Bahamas. Huge convective blob here in the south central Gulf. Now, why is this significant? Because pressures have changed about 3 or 4 millibars in the last 24 hours, and that's very significant in the tropics. It's very significant because they don't usually change much at all. But as we take I took this one step further and I said, well, what's going on over Texas? Pressures are changing there as well, 4 to 5 millibars in the last 24 hours. So our ridge is starting to collapse a little bit, and this could be a precursor of some very good things. Estelle has weakened quite a bit, down from 130 to 115 miles an hour, moving west-northwest at 14, 960 millibars as it continues to move west. And you will notice we've pretty much lost the eye to Estelle. That's been the feature today, even on the visible satellite imagery. But this could make a little bit of a comeback and show us an eye, but it's certainly a far cry from the 130-mile-per-hour hurricane that it was. So there it is moving away. Nothing else to really concern ourselves with in the eastern tropical Pacific. So some good news there. But a lot of little things in the Atlantic, as I mentioned. The Gulf, off the southeast coast with these two features here that definitely bear watching given the warm water that they are over and, of course, the proximity to the United States. Beautiful high pressure will make for another glorious Monday in the northeast, but some showers, obviously, with this low pressure tomorrow. And we've got some action firing up here in western Nebraska, just ahead of this trough line. As I mentioned, western Hooker County under a severe thunderstorm warning. We have not received word that they're even monitoring this area for a weather watch, but there certainly could be some small hail, maybe even some gusty winds out of some of these cells. And speaking of gusty winds, there was actually damage in St. Mary's Parish with these cells as they continue to drop toward the south. We'll keep you posted.
Dangerous heat plagues much of Texas, but the extended forecast holds hope for relief. Details next.
I'm Paul Emick at the Weather Channel. It is time for Storm Watch, where we look at all the active weather across the country. We look at radars and look at analysis across the entire country, pick the hot spots, the most active areas of weather. We bring that to you to show you where the action is potentially dangerous to you and your family. We'll also talk about a severe thunderstorm warning now in eastern Benton County, Arkansas in moments. First, let's talk tropics. Wow, is there a lot to talk about here in our tropical update, a part of Storm Watch during tropical season, here at about 10 minutes till every hour. Let's look way up top to the upper level winds. These are winds that create really good or really bad spots for development. To get a system really going, you have to have high pressure anticyclonic flow way up there. That high pressure aloft is there, so if air low pressure moves beneath it, it has kind of a safe, stable environment in which to intensify. If it encounters low pressure aloft, that can work to rip or shear a system apart. You want to see shear in action? This system did it. We had Tropical Storm Alex, which is no longer Tropical Storm Alex, now has been declassified. But as it moved into the area with a dramatic amount of cyclonic flow and shear, it was ripped apart pretty dramatically. Let's look, first of all, specifically what had happened, because we were looking to see that if it had made it beyond this area, it may have gone into a spot with some anticyclonic or high pressure flow aloft. That flow might have made it a favorable spot for additional strengthening, but it did get ripped up and came down quite a bit. Actually, though, we're looking at it even further now that it may actually start to intensify yet again. That's one of the things we're looking at with it now, is that it may be showing signs of circulation and maybe coming back. It could easily do that. But as Hurricane Hunter aircraft went into it, they weren't able to really detect anything as far as any kind of real center of circulation evidence. So that really didn't pose too much of a problem. Looking elsewhere at a number of things, including a batch of disturbed weather, we'll look at a radar in a moment. But right here, this is associated with the front at the surface. This is an extratropical system, not a tropical system. But if it holds on to the Gulf Stream and separates itself from the front, it could be a player in the weather of the week. That's why we're looking at it. Again, there's the front sprawled out, area of low pressure along it, plenty of showers and storms. You can even see the low pressure there, the spin. We have to have a pre-existing spin. That's another necessary ingredient to kick off a tropical storm or even see some tropical weather start to take shape as a pre-existing spin. If it hangs on the Gulf Stream, it'll be a few days before anything may happen with it. But we'll watch this to see if it may start to take on any kind of tropical characteristics. Elsewhere, we're looking at a number of areas of disturbed weather. And keeping an eye here, and even looking at some additional waves moving along. Another place where we see a rich source region for waves, that's the Cape Verde Islands around the western coast of Africa. Areas spin off here, a little convection on the south side of that area as it moves along. It means that that's the spot we're looking at with some of this storminess. And again, it may move along, and sometimes these waves make that long trek. Alex made it pretty far, but didn't quite make it all the way to the coast of the U.S. And we're looking at a couple of areas of disturbed weather. Again, we talked about a number of spots here with some convection being monitored. Into the Gulf, another area right now that's being looked at is right here. But it looks like it's a rendezvous as it moves into shore. It's probably too fast for it to become a true tropical system. Probably moving a little bit too fast. But that will be watched in case anything should happen here. But it doesn't look likely to become anything right now of a true tropical storm or classified tropical nature. In the Pacific, we look now toward Hurricane Estelle moving the way we'd like it, which is away from land. That motion expected to continue. Presently moving west-northwest at 14 miles per hour. Winds are down a bit to 110 miles an hour. A few hours back, it was 115. It was even stronger than that earlier today, but again, is moving well away from land. The dot shows where it became classified as a tropical storm, but now is its current position. You can still see that it's dying off a bit. You can look there and see that some of the cloud tops are cooling, some of the oranges and yellows disappearing. Not as much of it still around here. Still pretty sizable system spinning along counterclockwise motion, but it's moving into cooler water, and the whole thing should be dissipating over a period of days. What effect is going to have on the coast? Well, it's pretty far out, but it has been kicking the waves up toward Baja, and surfers like around Malibu will be enduring the benefit, if you will, of one thing, which will be the better surfing conditions around some of the south-facing shores like Malibu over the next few days. Here's a look at the contiguous 48. Again, that's one of the spots we're watching right there, that area below pressure, in case that makes it into the Gulf Stream. Along and elsewhere, though, some showers linger into Florida and big storms still across the plains. Still some scattered storms, maybe of a strong nature, maybe severe nature, where you see that red shading. You can even see right here pretty easily the counterclockwise motion there as the low pressure kind of sits and spins, keeps the soaking rains coming in across the Dakotas, as well as into Minnesota and Minneapolis, who've been wet for many, many hours. Also into portions of Nebraska, we've seen some incredible winds like around Hastings, even some reports of some 3/4-inch hail. Be very careful. Also into Benton County, Arkansas, I want to mention a severe thunderstorm warning in effect there as well. New Orleans getting quieter around Calcasieu Parish. We had wind damage reported here. Getting quieter as our wet weather is on the move. Showers linger into some southern sections of Florida, like around Lake Okeechobee, with a few storms here as well. Well, storms are still a part of our morning. You can see the showers and storms into Florida and even wet weather toward Minneapolis and eventually towards Chicagoland, just to mess up our day. We'll talk more about the Monday that lies before us and all the active weather confronting us tonight in Weather Center. Please stay tuned. That's next.
Deadly heat plagues the Lone Star State, but the extended forecast may offer signs of relief. More on the chance for a cool change in Texas next on Weather Center.
Please do not cross ropes. Do not use key.
Alex.